The fabric of your consciousness to the very beginning of the universe aren't just complex puzzles, but rather elegant reflections of a single, powerful geometric principle.
Yeah, it sounds a bit out there at first, maybe, but it's not about mystical thinking. Not really. It's grounded in rigorous mathematics.
Right.
This principle suggests that, the deepest truths often emerge when we literally flip our perspective, revealing these surprising symmetries across seemingly, well, totally separate domains.
Absolutely. We're diving deep into circle inversion, a geometric transformation that, at first glance seems purely abstract, something you'd find in a math textbook.
Right.
But as we'll explore today, its implications reach far, far beyond textbooks. It potentially offers a unified framework for understanding everything from altered states of consciousness, near-death experiences, the fundamental nature of string theory, even the origins and structure of our universe. It's quite a scope. It really is. We're going to show you how looking at reality inside out, quite literally, might help resolve some of science's most persistent paradoxes.
And our deep dive today, it pulls from a really diverse and, frankly, cutting-edge array of sources. We've been digging into things like geometric inversion, a geometric model of consciousness, some fascinating neuroscience from the DMT decoupling protocol, theoretical physics research like a paper called Circle Inversion, A New Frontier in String Theory, and also some, let's say, provocative critiques of scientific dogma from thinkers like Rupert Sheldrake and Michio Kaku. It's a real mix.
So this isn't just an academic exercise, right? For you listening, this is about potentially uncovering what might be a kind of hidden operating system of existence. Get ready for some serious aha moments, I think, that will profoundly challenge and expand your perspective on what's real and what's truly possible.
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning then. The core concept itself, circle inversion. What exactly is this geometric transformation, and what makes it such a powerful, versatile tool for looking at reality?
Okay, so at its most fundamental level, circle inversion is what's called a nonlinear geometric transformation. Essentially, it flips an entire plane or space, think of a flat sheet of paper, or even 3D space from its inside to its outside. And this flip happens relative to a defined inversion circle or a sphere in 3D.
Right, so imagine drawing a circle on that paper. That's your reference.
Exactly. That's your inversion circle. It acts like a kind of boundary or maybe a mirror. Any point that starts inside this reference circle gets mathematically mapped to a new point outside it. And crucially, vice versa, points outside get mapped inside.
So it's not just squishing things around, it's a complete reordering, a total flip. What about points that are right on the circle itself?
Ah, good question. Points directly on the inversion circle stay put. They remain fixed. They act as this sort of stable boundary or maybe a threshold between these two flipped realms, the inside and the outside.
Okay.
And what's really remarkable, I think, is that despite this complete spatial rearrangement, literally turning everything inside out, the transformation is entirely coherent. It actually maintains essential structural relationships.
So it's not random chaos.
Not at all. It's a rigorous mathematical operation.
Yeah.
And, importantly, it's conformal. That's a key property. It means it preserves angles locally. So even though distances and positions get totally reconfigured, the sort of shape of things, the angles between intersecting lines or curves at any given point remain exactly the same.
Right. Preserving angles, it sounds important for keeping the information intact somehow.
That's precisely it. It ensures that even though the geometry is radically altered, the underlying information, the essential shape or form of things remains intact, just viewed from a completely different perspective.
Okay, maybe an analogy would help here. Like, turning a glove inside out. The material's the same, the stitching is the same, but its configuration, how it occupies space, is totally changed.
That's a great analogy. The glove is fundamentally the same object, but its inside-outside relationship is inverted. Or think about a photographic negative.
Yeah, light becomes dark, dark becomes light.
But the image itself, the relationships between the shapes, the information is all still there. You recognize the scene, but its presentation is fundamentally flipped.
Okay, I think I'm getting a handle on it. It's this coherent flip.
And it's not hand-waving. Mathematically, it's governed by a precise formula. If you take the center of the inversion circle, the distance to an original point multiplied by the distance to its inverted partner point always equals the radius of the inversion circle squared. It's precise.
Got it. So it's this elegant geometric operation. But why does this abstract math concept matter for understanding something as huge and messy as consciousness or the whole cosmos? What's the leap here?
The leap, or the so what, is its incredible power as a model. Its ability to coherently flip spatial relationships while preserving that essential information makes it a really potent candidate for understanding any complex system that undergoes a radical transformation, a fundamental shift in perspective or state.
So you're saying this isn't just a mathematical curiosity?
Exactly. It might be a kind of hidden language that describes these fundamental shifts in our perception, in the very fabric of our minds, maybe even in the dynamics of the universe itself. It's like a universal key, perhaps, that shows how things can profoundly change their form while staying fundamentally connected.
A universal key. That's a bold claim. Let's really dig into that. How could this geometric flip apply to something as intimate, as subjective as our own consciousness?
Well, this brings us right into the idea of inverting consciousness. The core idea here is that circle inversion can directly model shifts from what we might call an embodied local consciousness state. That's our normal everyday awareness, feeling centered in our body, perceiving the world from that specific viewpoint.
Right, my normal me here now feeling.
Exactly. It models the shift from that state to a non-local consciousness state, a state where that sense of being rigidly bound to the body dissolves and perspective becomes, well, different. External, maybe? Vastly expanded.
So this idea of a mirror world, which you hear about from visionaries like Terence McKenna or William Blake, this model suggests it's not just poetry.
It's more than just poetry, yes. It allows us to think about this mirror world not as some fantasy realm, but as a potentially geometrically structured and neurologically correlated shift. It's like the outside or the inverted configuration of consciousness's usual inside state.
And there's actual evidence for this kind of shift.
Well, we're seeing suggestive experiential evidence, particularly in research involving compounds like DMT, especially within studies using something called the DMT decoupling protocol. Participants consistently report these profound shifts in perception. They often describe feeling like they've stepped outside their normal reality or seeing their own body from an external viewpoint. That aligns incredibly well with this geometric inversion model.
That's a powerful link, subjective reports matching a mathematical model. But how does the brain actually do this? What's happening neurologically during these intense altered states?
That's where it gets really fascinating. Compelling neuroimaging studies using fMRI and EEG during these intense DMT states show the brain.
Oh, well.
It quite literally reconfigures itself in ways that seem to map onto this geometric description.
Reconfigures how?
One key finding is what researchers call profound decoupling of brain networks and network desegregation. Normally, our brain works in a very organized, hierarchical way. Different networks are responsible for different things, and they're somewhat segregated, filtered.
Like departments in a company.
Kind of, yeah. But under DMT, this rigid organization, this filtering system, it breaks down significantly. The usual communication patterns get scrambled, or rather reconfigured.
And this breakdown, this desegregation, it matches the inversion model.
Mathematically, the correspondence is striking. This profound decoupling and the resulting reorganization directly mirror the flipping of interior and exterior regions in geometric inversion. It basically allows previously separate neural regions, or entire brain networks, to connect and communicate in totally new, non-hierarchical ways. It's like the brain is accessing information streams that are normally filtered out by our everyday localized consciousness.
Wow, the brain literally rewires itself on the fly. But there's something else too, this idea of directional reversal or antenna retuning. What's that about?
Right, this is maybe even stranger. It's a really curious phenomenon observed in brainwave activity. Typically, the brain shows a lot of backward traveling waves. These are thought to be linked to predictive processing, our brain constantly predicting what's coming next, based on past experience, building its model of reality.
Okay, the brain anticipating things.
Yes. But under DMT, this pattern flips. You see predominantly forward-traveling waves, which are usually associated more with processing actual raw sensory input coming in from the external world now.
Whoa. So the brain literally inverts its normal information processing direction. Like you said, like a radio retuning to a hidden frequency to access an inverted reality, or maybe a different information field entirely.
That's the analogy researchers are using, yeah. It offers a potential direct, physically measurable mechanism for perceiving this mirror world. It suggests the brain isn't just generating random noise, but it's undergoing a structured, measurable shift in its fundamental operating mode. It's changing its internal tuning to perceive a different bandwidth of reality, one that might be geometrically inverted compared to our everyday experience.
This is really pushing the boundaries. And it leads us straight into some of the deepest mysteries, the biggest paradoxes challenging our standard view of consciousness, things like near-death experiences, NDEs, and terminal lucidity.
Exactly. These phenomena, particularly studied by researchers like Dr. Sam Parnia at NYU Langone, they directly confront the conventional model, the idea that the brain produces consciousness, full stop.
How so?
Well, Parnia's research is key. His studies and others have found that a significant percentage, maybe up to 40% of cardiac arrest survivors report some perception of awareness during their clinical death when the heart is stopped, and brain activity, by all standard measures, should cease within seconds.
Awareness when the brain is offline.
And even more strikingly, about 2% report full awareness. These aren't just vague feelings. They involve verifiable recollections of actual events happening around them, like details of the resuscitation efforts in the operating room, things they couldn't possibly have known through normal senses, especially when their brain was supposedly shut down.
That's hard to explain if consciousness is just brain activity.
It's extremely challenging for that model. And then you have terminal lucidity. This is the astonishing, unexpected return of mental clarity, coherence, sometimes even deep emotional reconnection in patients with severe brain damage, people with advanced dementia, deep comas, brain tumors, just moments, hours, maybe sometimes days before death.
Right, I've heard accounts of this. Someone who hasn't spoken coherently in years suddenly having a clear conversation.
Exactly. And the profound question is, how can a severely compromised, degenerating brain, one that's objectively failing, suddenly produce such a coherent, articulate mind? It just doesn't compute within the standard brain as producer framework.
So how do these alternative models like PSU mode or the DMT protocol try to explain these paradoxes?
Well, they see these phenomena as strong support for a different view, that the brain acts less like a generator and more like a biological transceiver or receiver of a wider, perhaps universal conscious field. Consciousness isn't produced solely by the brain. It's accessed or mediated by it.
The brain as an antenna or a filter.
Precisely. In this view, consciousness could persist or be accessed even when normal brain function is severely impaired or has ceased. The brain normally filters this wider consciousness down to our everyday experience, but in these extreme states, the filter malfunctions or is bypassed.
And the DMT decoupling protocol suggests a specific trigger for this in NDEs.
Yes, it hypothesizes that a massive final release of all stored endogenous N- and dimethyltryptamine, DMT, that our bodies naturally produce, could act as a primary trigger for this end-of-life cascade during extreme physiological stress, like cardiac arrest or the dying process.
And this DMT flood does two things.
Potentially, yes. A proposed dual function. First, neuroprotection. DMT might help protect neurons, keeping the brain's hardware viable just long enough for this, let's call it, transitional process to occur.
Okay, keeping the lights on briefly.
And second, crucially, antenna retuning. This DMT surge could radically alter the brain's operating parameters, maybe by taking key networks offline, particularly the default mode network, the DMN.
The DMN, that's like the brain's background chatter, our sense of self ruminating.
Largely, yes.
Yeah.
It's heavily involved in self-referential thought, mind-wandering, maintaining our narrative self. Taking the DMN offline might be like turning down the brain's internal filter for consensus reality, allowing access to a much broader spectrum of information, signals, maybe that wider conscious field.
And then there's the electrical signature. They see this weird surge of gamma waves.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive. During oxygen deprivation, anoxia, you get this glutamate storm, which you'd expect to cause chaos. But instead, researchers observe a paradoxical surge of highly organized, coherent electrical activity, specifically in the gamma frequency band.
And gamma waves are usually associated with
High-level cognition, binding different sensory inputs into a unified perception, rapid memory retrieval, heightened awareness, peak conscious states, basically. So this gamma surge provides a potential neurological basis for the vivid life review phenomenon often reported in NDEs, that sense of seeing your whole life flash before you, maybe not chronologically, but perhaps understanding actions from others' perspectives.
like that anecdote about Rachel Finch seeing her life from her guinea pig's perspective.
Exactly, that kind of empathetic, holistic review. And this surge could also explain the temporary restoration of memory and clarity and terminal lucidity, allowing that final coherent connection.
This model goes even deeper, though, right, to the quantum level. Biophotons.
It does. It hypothesizes a final massive burst of biophotons. These are ultra-weak light emissions that living cells naturally produce. They're known to exhibit quantum properties like entanglement.
So light emitted by our cells.
The idea is that this coherent burst of biophotons might act as the quantum-level carrier of consciousness, the actual physical signature of the non-local information wave being released from its material anchor during the dying process. It connects to ideas from physicists like Gideon Coco, who emphasize light, electromagnetism, as fundamental to the universe's symmetry and information transfer. Photons as the ultimate messengers.
Consciousness carried on light. That is truly mind-bending. But what about the content of these experiences? Why are they so personal, yet also share common themes? This is where observer shaping comes in.
Yes, this is a core, and you could say radical, part of the model. It suggests that when the brain's normal filters are down, suspended by that DMT flood, perhaps the individual's own information wave, their core consciousness, interacts directly with what the framework called a field of pure potential.
Meaning the reality experienced isn't prepackaged.
Exactly. It's not like stepping into a phased, universally designed afterlife. Instead, the experienced reality is a co-creation. It's actively shaped by the observer's own deepest beliefs, their memories, cultural conditioning, archetypal structures embedded in their psyche.
So consciousness isn't just passively watching a movie, it's helping direct it.
In a sense, yes. This could explain why NDEs often share core themes, feelings of overwhelming love, peace, encounters with beings of light or deceased relatives, tapping into universal archetypes or expectations, but also display highly specific, culturally influenced imagery. You know, why someone might see Ezekiel's eyed wheels, while someone else, like McKenna, reports jeweled, self-dribbling machine elves.
Right, the underlying potential is there, but the form it takes is shaped by the individual's mind.
It points towards a fundamentally participatory universe, where observation isn't passive, but actively shapes reality, perhaps echoing quantum principles on a macro scale. It implies our internal world profoundly influences the reality we perceive, especially when the usual filters are removed.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. If we're looking for more common, maybe less extreme examples of this kind of consciousness inversion, dreams seem like the obvious candidate, right?
Absolutely. Dreams are probably the most universal and readily accessible example of this kind of perspective transformation. When we dream, our sense of self can become fluid, the environment can shift instantly, the laws of physics might not apply. It's a nightly dive into an altered state.
The unconscious mind as a kind of potential mirror world.
You could see it that way, yeah. A realm accessible through dreams, perhaps deep meditation too. And crucially, those conformal properties of circle inversion we talked about, preserving angles, preserving structure, they become relevant here too. They could ensure informational coherence and information preservation even within the bizarre landscape of a dream.
Meaning, even if the dream feels totally weird, there's still meaning, still structure.
Exactly. It prevents a complete and utter loss of self or total informational chaos. The underlying emotional truths, the structural relationships between dream elements, the core information it's reserved, even if presented in a radically different inverted form.
And there's this fascinating mathematical property called involution. Applying inversion twice gets you back to where you started. What does that imply for consciousness?
It's a profound implication. It suggests that these transitions between conscious states, say, waking to dreaming and back, might be fundamentally reversible. The dream state, or the unconscious mirror world, potentially holds the complete, perfectly preserved information needed to reconstruct the original waking state.
Like a perfect backup copy.
In a mathematical sense, yes. It implies an inherent key that can both unlock and relock these states, a complete reversible informational mapping between different conscious realities. This gives a theoretical basis for seeing dreams not just as random noise, but as meaningful states that can be navigated and their information reintegrated into waking life.
Speaking of navigating altered states, we absolutely have to talk about Terence McKenna and the infamous La Chorrera experiment. He was such a fascinating figure, really pushing the boundaries.
He certainly was, an open-minded skeptic, as some described him, who delved incredibly deep into these states. And his experiences, particularly around La Chorrera, connect strongly to these ideas of observer shaping and inverted realities.
The experiment was driven by his brother Dennis's quest, wasn't it? Investigating this magical fluid, the blue flam.
That's right. A substance shamans were supposedly able to, well, vomit. That was said to have qualities of both matter and mind, something through which you could allegedly see the future or the past. Pretty wild stuff.
And Dennis McKenna had this incredibly radical theory connecting memory to DNA.
To the so-called nonsense portions of DNA, yeah. He proposed that certain psychedelic molecules, which are often flat, planar molecules, could physically intercalate, essentially slip in between the base pairs of the DNA helix without actually disrupting the genetic code itself. And this process might be driven or enhanced by acoustical sound, like shamanic chanting.
Okay, molecules slipping into DNA, then what?
The really far-out part was the idea that these molecules, like Harmon, which he noted looks structurally like a kind of antenna, could alter the DNA's electron spin resonance, or ESR. This altered ESR, the theory went, would then cause the DNA to broadcast an acoustical hologram, a sound-based projection containing all the information gathered by that species over its entire evolutionary history, effectively stored within the DNA. The blue flam was supposed to be this acoustical hologram made manifest.
An acoustical hologram of ancestral memory broadcast by DNA.
Wow.
And McKenna actually recounted his brother Dennis saying something during that experiment that sounds uncannily like circle inversion.
He did. It's a striking anecdote. Dennis apparently told him something along the lines of, to achieve a radical transformation, maybe even physical inversion or curing disease, you had to picture the number 8, lay it on its side, so the infinity symbol, fold it so it's 2 circles, lay them over top of one another, so it's 1 circle, and then step through it.
Step through the circle.
It's such a vivid, almost instructional image that directly evokes the geometry of circle inversion, defining a boundary and transgressing it, moving from one side to the other. Whether Dennis meant it literally or metaphorically, it's a fascinating parallel.
Absolutely. And this whole process, they called it hypercarbonation, believing it could lead to, what, the philosopher's stone?
Something like that. The idea was that this hypercarbonation process could allow one's soul, or conscious essence, to become visible and stabilized in 3-dimensional space, perhaps as a kind of hyperdimensional molecule.
Yeah.
And in that state, McKenna recounted the belief that the continued existence of your physical body would become optional. Extremely radical territory.
And McKenna's own experiences during this time were pretty extreme too, right? He described a kind of psychotic episode.
Yes, he spoke about feeling spread out through the whole universe and then imploding backward, generating what he called totality symbols, ideas, or visions that seemed to explain everything all at once. He described witnessing something like someone acting out the Big Bang, condensed through galactic history.
And that bizarre UFO encounter.
Right, the UFO that he perceived as looking like an end cast of the 1937 Hoover vacuum cleaner. Which sounds absurd, but it's a powerful, strange example of that observer-shaping principle, the mind actively projecting familiar forms onto the unknown or the numinous in these highly altered, perhaps inverted states.
So while these accounts are definitely on the fringes, they really underscore the potential for consciousness to interact with fundamental information in profound ways, ways that seem to align with these geometric models of inversion and observer participation.
They push the boundaries, certainly, but they fit within this framework of consciousness, not just passively receiving reality, but actively constructing it, especially when the usual rules are suspended.
Okay, let's zoom out now. From the individual mind, deeply strange as it can be, to the entire cosmos. How does this geometric idea of inversion scale up? Can it apply to the universe itself, to physics?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting for theoretical physics.
Yeah.
The principle of circle inversion, it turns out, gracefully extends to higher dimensions. We talk about hypersphere inversion in n-dimensional spaces.
Okay, n dimensions. What does that mean practically?
It provides a robust mathematical structure to model complex multidimensional states. These n dimensions could represent different fundamental aspects of consciousness, maybe attention, memory, emotion, qualia, or they could represent deeper abstract qualities or hidden symmetries within the universe itself. It gives us a richer mathematical canvas.
And there's a specific mathematical reason why inversion is so important in higher dimensions. Liouville's theorem.
Yes, exactly. Liouville's theorem is quite remarkable. It states that in dimensions 3 or higher, inversive transformations are essentially the only angle-preserving mappings, the only conformal transformations, aside from symbol translations, rotations, and scaling.
The only ones. Why is that so significant?
It implies this deep, almost inherent connection between the very structure of space-time itself, in 3 or more dimensions, and the way complex systems, maybe like consciousness, can process, maintain, and transform information while preserving those crucial local relationships, those angles. It suggests inversion isn't just a tool, it might be the fundamental tool for coherent transformation in higher dimensions.
And people have tried to build models based on this.
Oh, yes. This isn't just abstract potential. You have pioneering work like Gustav Brunner applying inversive geometry and conformal maps, even Mobius strips, to model consciousness. And frameworks like the projective consciousness model, PCM, use reloaded projective transformations. These show you can conceptualize consciousness as a kind of dynamic geometric matrix in a way that's mathematically rigorous, not just metaphorical.
Okay, rigorous math. Now here's a potentially huge connection. Circle inversion as string theory's native citizen. That sounds like a big claim. Is this geometry fundamental to string theory?
It seems to be deeply embedded, yes. The key is that conformal transformations serve as string theory's mathematical backbone. String theory relies heavily on theories that are invariant under conformal transformations that preserve angles. And circle inversion is a fundamental type of conformal math.
So it's part of the basic toolkit.
It's more than just a tool. It's often part of the structure itself. For instance, inversion is a fundamental component of Möbius transformations, and those are critical for calculating things like scattering amplitudes, how strings or particles interact.
And what about the holographic principle? Add SCFT correspondence. That always comes up.
Right, add SCFT, the idea that a theory of quantum gravity in some volume of space, the anti-de Sitter bulk, is equivalent to a quantum field theory without gravity on the boundary of that space, the conformal field theory boundary. This correspondence relies entirely on conformal symmetry.
And inversion is part of that symmetry.
Absolutely. The group of symmetries of the ADS bulk space maps directly onto the conformal group of the boundary CFT, and that conformal group inherently includes inversion. In fact, circle inversion is always an isometry, a distance-preserving symmetry in certain ADS-CFT frameworks. This potentially offers new computational tools for holographic calculations.
So the whole boundary bulk relationship, the core of holography, kind of mirrors the inside-outside flip of circle inversion.
The geometric analogy is very strong, yes. It offers fresh perspectives on bulk reconstruction from boundary data, how you rebuild the inside picture from the information on the edge. The holographic principle itself, encoding 3D bulk info on a 2D boundary via a transformation that preserves essential geometric relationships while changing scale and location, it really does resemble geometric inversion.
Wow. What about other aspects of string theory, like dualities?
Yes, strong connections there too. Take T-duality. It relates string theory on a large radius circle to theory on a small radius circle. The doubled formalism, used to make T-duality manifest, treats coordinates in a way that's very analogous to how inversion relates points inside and outside a reference circle.
And S-duality.
S-duality shows potentially even stronger connections. It relates strongly interacting strings to weakly interacting strings, GEIO1G. In type IIB string theory, S-duality is governed by a mathematical group called SL2, the modular group. And a fundamental action of this group is the transformation Z, nec-now-1s, which is a canonical representation of an inversion transformation. It's baked right into the duality symmetry.
So inversion isn't just compatible with string theory. It seems to be part of its fundamental structure, popping up in scattering, holography, dualities.
Pretty much. And because of this deep connection via conformal invariants, applying inversion transformations to key string theory equations like the operator product expansion, Ward identities, the stress-energy tensor tends to preserve their essential mathematical structure. It's a symmetry of the theory.
Okay, so summing up the string theory part, circle inversion looks like it could be fundamental to understanding the geometric structures underlying these deep principles like dualities and holography. It offers new computational tools and maybe even a path towards theoretical unification.
That's the hope and the direction some research is exploring. It's a potentially transformative frontier.
All right, let's take this geometry from the incredibly small scale of strings to the incredibly large scale, cosmology. Can circle inversion actually help us understand the Big Bang? That sounds almost audacious.
It does, but it can, in a really clever way. The key is that our standard cosmological model, the Friedman-Robertson-Walker FRW universe, is what we call conformally flat, especially when you use a time coordinate called conformal time. This mathematical property makes it really amenable to inversion transformations.
And what does applying inversion do to our picture of the universe?
Here's the cool part. Inversion can mathematically drag the Big Bang singularity to conformal infinity.
Wait, drag the singularity?
Yeah.
To infinity. So instead of this infinitely dense point at the beginning that we can't really handle mathematically, it becomes, what, a boundary?
Exactly. You don't eliminate the singularity, but you transform the geometry so that the initial moment, instead of being a point, behaves like a boundary surface, infinitely far away in conformal time. We can analyze boundaries mathematically. It's similar in spirit to Penrose's technique of conformal compactification, where you bring infinity in close to study it. Inversion is like the local version of that move.
That's a powerful mathematical trick, and it connects to that conceptual idea we touched on earlier, the Big Bang as an inversion event itself.
It provides a mathematical framework where that kind of thinking isn't just poetic. Some might speculate, could the Big Bang be the result of the universe's first circle inversion?
Hmm.
Imagine some precursor state, maybe pure information or potential existing outside our spacetime. Then an inversion event occurs, perhaps triggered by something analogous to the let there be light moment, flipping that potential inside through an infinitesimal point, a keyhole. The sheer energy information density explodes outwards from that point, creating the expanding cone of our universe, potentially leaving an inverted shadow in the precursor space. It's speculative, but inversion gives a geometric language to visualize such an origin.
A geometric origin story. Fascinating. How else does inversion help in cosmology, this early-late duality or UVIR echoes?
Right. UVIR refers to the connection between physics at very small scales, ultraviolet, high energy early times, and very large scales, infrared, low energy, late times. Inversion can mathematically turn early time UV structure into late time IR structure. It makes these connections more concrete.
So tiny fluctuations in the very early universe could be directly mapped using inversion onto the largest structures we see today, like galaxy clusters and voids.
Conceptually, yes. It gives us concrete ways to chase CMB, large angle weirdness, those anomalies in the temperature map of the early universe. You could try to invert, localize, and test if specific large-scale structures today correspond via inversion to specific early universe features.
Any specific example?
Well, consider cosmic voids, those huge empty regions, and galaxy halos dense regions. Inversion about a sphere centered, say, on a void, can approximately swap the expanding underdensity of the void with the collapsing overdensity of a halo. This predicts a relationship. If you measure the weak gravitational lensing shear around big voids, then invert and rescale the map, it should statistically match the lensing shear pattern around halos.
And if it doesn't match?
Then that tells you something interesting. It reveals physics that isn't conformal, something beyond the simple inversion model, like specific properties of dark matter or dark energy.
And it helps with understanding cosmic horizons.
Yes, because inversion is conformal, it preserves the paths of light rays, null geodesics. This means it preserves the causal structure, things like particle horizons, how far back we can see, and event horizons, like around black holes, points of no return. You can do calculations involving causal relationships in this simpler inverted space, and then map the results back. It cleans up the reasoning.
This whole cosmic inversion idea seems to resonate strongly with the PSU-MOTE framework we mentioned earlier, the primary superfluid unified model.
It really does. PSU-MOTE envisions the universe as a cosmic quantum superfluid and aims to provide structural solutions to the cracks appearing in the standard lambda CDM model, rather than just adding more new particles or parameters. It argues many anomalies might be explained by the fluid dynamics of spacetime itself.
And it claims support from recent observations like from the James Webb Space Telescope.
Indeed, JWST finding those unexpectedly huge supermassive black holes very early in the universe is a major challenge for standard models, which assume they grow slowly over billions of years from small seeds.
Right, like that monster black hole, 300 million solar masses just 500 million years after the Big Bang. It just shouldn't be there, according to the old models.
PS-MOTE sees this as powerful corroboration. It suggests these could form rapidly via direct collapse of massive primordial gas clouds, or grow extremely quickly in the dense, turbulent superfluid conditions of the very early universe. It offers a structural solution within its framework. Similarly, the weird black hole mergers LIGO-Virgo are seeing ones in an unexpected mass gap or spinning incredibly fast. PS-MOTE suggests these are natural outcomes in a fluid-like cosmos, rather than just problems for stellar evolution models.
So PSU-MOTE isn't just explaining old data, it's making new, testable predictions based on this superfluid idea, falsifiable tests.
Exactly. This is crucial. It offers a range of next-generation predictions where inversion geometry could be a key analytical tool.
Let's hear a few highlights. What are some really standout predictions?
Okay, one involves gravitational wave astronomy. PSMO predicts we might detect a tiny but measurable time of arrival delay between gravitational waves and light or other electromagnetic signals coming from the same event, like a neutron-star merger.
A delay. What?
If the waves travel through a dense region of the cosmic superfluid, like a galaxy's dark matter halo, the gravitational waves might interact subtly with phonon excitations, quantized sound waves in the superfluid. This could cause a minuscule drag on the gravitational waves that light wouldn't experience. Detecting this would be evidence for spacetime having a kind of texture, or effective refractive index, but the precision needed is immense.
So space-time itself could slow down gravity waves. Wow. What about the cosmic web?
PSMOT sees the vast filaments connecting galaxy clusters not just as passive structures, but potentially as phonon highways, conduits for disturbances in the superfluid. The prediction is we might observe correlated activity, like simultaneous bursts of star formation or flickering galactic nuclei, AGN flares, in different galaxy clusters linked by a filament.
Activity synchronized across millions of light years.
With a predictable time delay, corresponding to the travel time of these phonon disturbances through the superfluid filament, it would imply a communication channel across the cosmos we never imagined existed, mediated by this superfluid dark matter.
That's wild. Any others? Dark matter phase transitions?
Yes, this tries to explain why dark matter seems to behave differently in galaxies versus clusters. PSU mode predicts we might see sharp breaks or discontinuities in gravitational lensing maps right at the edge of galaxy halos. This would mark a physical boundary of phase transition, where the superfluid dark matter inside the halo meets a different phase, perhaps a more normal fluid dark matter, in the hotter surrounding environment. You might even see corresponding sharp features in X-ray emissions from the hot gas interacting with this boundary.
Okay, and maybe the most ambitious one, emergent unification.
This is really aiming high. The prediction is that in the most extreme cosmic events, that mergers of supermassive black holes, or maybe giant flares from magnetars, highly magnetized neutron stars, our most sensitive future observatories might detect a statistically significant anomalous correlation between the emitted gravitational waves and high-energy photons like gamma rays.
A correlation beyond what standard physics predicts.
Yes, it wouldn't be explained by current models of gravity and electromagnetism acting independently. It would be the first direct evidence for a unified origin of these forces, hinting that gravity and light are ultimately just different ripples, different expressions of the same underlying cosmic quantum superfluid. That would be revolutionary.
So PSMOT offers these concrete, potentially observable phenomena. How does inversion geometry fit into testing this?
If the PSMU superfluid behaves, as expected, as nearly conformal at long wavelengths, then the mathematics of inversion becomes a powerful test. It forces specific relationships between statistical measures of cosmic structure, things like unpoint correlation functions, by spectrum shapes in regions dominated by voids versus regions dominated by halos. These patterns must match up under inversion if the conformal superfluid picture is correct.
So inversion isn't just a description, it's a falsifier. It makes definite predictions about cosmic patterns.
Precisely. It serves as a falsifier, not just a vibe. It makes those UVI echoes algebraic instead of poetic. It reveals potential cosmic rhymes as specific inversion symmetries across voidalo statistics. It gives concrete mathematical predictions to test the whole PSUMO framework.
This is a truly radical rethinking of the cosmos, but proposing something this different inevitably means challenging some very established scientific ideas, right? Which brings us to Rupert Sheldrake and his concept of the science delusion.
Right. Sheldrake's work critiques what he sees as a kind of dogmatism within mainstream science. He defined the science delusion as the belief that science already understands the nature of reality in principle, leaving only the details to be filled in. He argues this attitude, this assumption of near completeness, actually inhibits and constricts the free inquiry that science is supposed to be all about.
He argues science has become too tied to one philosophical viewpoint.
Specifically, philosophical materialism. He suggests that since the late 19th century, science has largely operated under this worldview, often implicitly, making the different scientific disciplines like wholly owned subsidiaries of the materialist worldview, sometimes without even questioning those underlying assumptions.
And he identified specific dogmas that arise from this.
Yes, he listed 10 core beliefs often treated as unquestionable facts rather than hypotheses. Several are directly relevant to our discussion today. For example, the dogma that matter is unconscious. If consciousness is fundamental or received, as some of these models suggest, that challenges this deeply.
Okay, what else?
Another huge one, especially for cosmology, the dogma that the laws of nature are fixed. The idea that the laws and fundamental constants we measure today has been exactly the same since the Big Bang and will remain so forever. Sheldrake finds this quite ironic, calling it a hangover from an older worldview of an eternal God setting eternal laws. He provocatively suggests maybe that the laws themselves evolve, acting more like habits acquired by the universe over time, reinforced by what he calls morphic resonance.
Habits of the universe. That's a different way to think.
It is. He satirizes what he calls modern science's acceptance of one free miracle, the sudden, unexplained appearance of all matter, energy, and all the fixed laws out of absolutely nothing at the Big Bang, which then conveniently remain unchanged forever after.
What other dogmas does our discussion touch on?
Well, the dogma that memories are stored inside your brain as material traces. Despite decades of searching, no one has definitively found how or where specific memories are stored physically. The transceiver model offers an alternative. And, of course, the related dogma that your mind is inside your head, that all consciousness is just brain activity. And flowing from that, the dogma that psychic phenomena like telepathy are impossible because thoughts are confined to the brain and can't have non-local effects. Our exploration of non-local consciousness, NDEs, the potential biophoton field, it all pushes against these assumptions.
Sheldrake also shared some anecdotes about encountering this dogmatic thinking in practice.
He did. He tells a story about talking to the head of metrology, the science of measurement in Britain, about what was called the most embarrassing episode in their field's history, an apparent significant drop in the measured speed of light between about 1928 and 1945.
The speed of light changed.
Well, the measurements did. The official explanation wasn't that the constant itself changed because it's a constant, but rather that scientists were unconsciously influencing each other, a kind of intellectual phase locking, where results nudge towards previously published values. They eventually fixed the problem in 1972 by defining the meter based on the speed of light, effectively making the speed of light constant by definition, so any future changes in measurement would be interpreted as changes in the length of the meter stick, not the speed of light itself.
So they define the problem away.
Essentially. He also discussed the gravitational constant, big G. Unlike other constants, measurements of G vary quite a bit, sometimes by over 1.3%, far more than the experimental uncertainty allows. Yet he found that metrologists often refuse to even look for patterns or correlations in the raw data over time, simply stating G is a constant. There's no point looking for changes.
Wow. That perfectly illustrates how a dogmatic assumption actually inhibits inquiry, doesn't it? If you assume you know the answer, you don't even look at the data that might contradict it.
Exactly. It's a cautionary tale about how certainty can sometimes blind us, preventing us from asking fundamental questions or exploring anomalies.
Which really underscores the need for a kind of new synthesis, doesn't it? A willingness to integrate different perspectives and question assumptions. Even mainstream physicists acknowledge limitations.
Right. You hear someone like Mikio Kaku talking about string theory, acknowledging the equations are so complicated no one's been able to crack them, maybe requiring quantum computers to even test them properly. There's an admission of hitting mathematical walls.
And Neil deGrasse Tyson, reacting to discoveries like unexpected black hole mergers or those early galaxies from JWST, openly says things like they defy our understanding or force us to rethink everything we thought we knew. He frames it positively as an exciting frontier, but it's still an admission that the current picture is incomplete.
And this is precisely the kind of attitude the PSMO2 framework, for example, calls for. It explicitly advocates for a new synthesis and an integrated science, one that seeks to investigate existence by dissolving the artificial wall between the physical and the metaphysical, moving beyond what it calls naive realism, the simplistic idea that the world is exactly as we perceive it. Our whole deep dive today, pulling together geometry, consciousness, cosmology, it really embodies that call for integration.
It comes back to Sheldrake's point. Questioning these dogmas, even if they seem foundational, is what opens up new avenues for research, new possibilities. It could lead to a real reflowering of science, one that's genuinely open to discovery wherever it leads.
It requires humility, I suppose, a willingness to say we don't know and to follow the evidence even if it leads to uncomfortable or unfamiliar places.
What an incredible and definitely mind-bending journey we've been on today. We started with circle inversion, seemed like just a neat geometric trick flipping inside and outside.
While preserving those essential relationships, those angles, a coherent flip.
And then we saw how this seemingly simple idea explodes with implications. First, in understanding consciousness itself, offering a rigorous way to model those shifts in altered states like under DMT, making sense of the profound paradoxes of NDEs and terminal lucidity, even grounding the nightly inversions of our dreams.
Yeah, suggesting the brain might be more like a transceiver, tuning into different realities or a broader conscious field, rather than just generating everything itself.
Then we scaled way up into the cosmos. We saw circle inversion isn't just some obscure math. It appears to be a native citizen of string theory, deeply woven into its structure, crucial for understanding dualities and the holographic principle.
And providing powerful tools for cosmology, letting us mathematically grapple with the Big Bang, maybe even visualize its origin as an inversion event, and test predictions about the universe's large-scale structure by relating the very small to the very large, the voids to the halos.
And through that PSU lens, we saw how inversion geometry, combined with the idea of a cosmic superfluid, could offer structural solutions to nagging cosmological problems, making concrete, falsifiable predictions from gravity waves slowing down to cosmic communication networks to hints of unified forces.
It really starts to tie things together. What stands out is how these phenomena that often seem completely separate, weird subjective experiences, anomalies in brain scans, puzzles in string theory, unexpected galaxies, they begin to cohere. They look less like isolated mysteries and more like different facets of a deeper interconnected reality, possibly described by this language of geometric inversion and maybe a fundamental cosmic fluid.
It suggests a hidden order, right? A deeper logic, maybe a universal language that spans from the quantum workings of the mind all the way out to the largest structures in the cosmos.
It definitely reminds us that our understanding of reality, our minds, the universe, it's incredibly far from complete. And sometimes the most elegant solutions, the most profound insights come from simply inverting our perspective, literally looking at things inside out or outside in. It unlocks new ways of seeing.
And that leaves us, and you listening, with a really provocative final thought to chew on. If our deepest beliefs, our memories, our core psychological patterns can actively co-create the reality we experience in those extreme liminal states like NDEs or deep psychedelic journeys, as that observer-shaping idea suggests.
What does that imply about the reality that we're all collectively shaping right here, right now in our everyday lives? Perhaps more subtly, but maybe just as powerfully.
And if we could gain a deeper understanding of these processes, these potential inversions, this observer participation, how might that change how we approach living, how we understand the power and potential of our own minds? And ultimately, how we approach that universal transition, that final inversion, perhaps, that awaits every single one of us.
Definitely some heavy things to ponder. It suggests the relationship between mind and reality might be far more dynamic, far more participatory than we usually assume.
Indeed. Well, we invite you, our curious listeners, to keep pondering these ideas. Keep that mind open, look for the flips, the inversions in your own understanding of the world. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.